You're watching Picks on Politics with Dan Manarino.
And welcome back to Picks on Politics, everybody. And let's talk about the race for New York City mayor. We're on the roller coaster ride for the Democratic race with many more twists and turns to go. Curtis Sliwa seems to be smoothly sailing into the Republican nomination, but the general election won't be a two-man race. Political independent Jim Walden from Brooklyn running as an independent, and he is joining me now. So, Jim, great to have you here on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
So let's begin about this very tumultuous race that we've kind of seen, and you're entering this as an independent. So let me talk a little bit about your party background, because you were a Democrat.
I was.
You left the Democratic Party in 2006. You considered for a period of time running as a Republican, and now you're here as an independent. So kind of walk me through your logic to jump into the race as an independent.
Yeah, so start with my background, right? When I left the Democratic Party in 2006, I was very frustrated with where the party was. It was the Clinton administration led to the Bush administration. I was a young prosecutor at the time and was very concerned about the direction DOJ was going to be taking, and decided that I wanted to be apolitical. So I registered as an unaffiliated voter, and I've never registered for a party since. When I entered the race, I really looked closely at the data for voting results and saw that there was a lot of places in the city where people had voted Democrat and then voted Republican and gone back and forth. So I call that purple.
Yeah.
There's a lot of purple in the city, and I think right now in particular, there's so much frustration locally, nationally with both parties that now is a time that an independent can really break through.
You know, and just for your background, you are a prominent New York City attorney, and you've actually put up some high-profile clients. You worked with Andrew Cuomo, Bill de Blasio, Tish James. You now have a lawsuit tied to the corruption charges against Mayor Adams. So I guess how did representing those folks kind of shape your decision to jump into the race, and how is that informing how you're going to run against them?
Yeah, so I've met or represented so many more people in addition to the ones on your list, and I've seen the good and bad in government, right? As someone who has mostly libertarian perspectives, I think government should be focusing on delivering results for people, period, full stop. There's so much grandstanding and showboating with all of these politicians that I found some good things that they did, and I saw a lot of bad. And I wanted a different vision for people where somebody didn't need the job but wanted the job and wanted to just do the job without grandstanding. But
why was it this time? Was it the charges against Eric Adams that led you?
It was a culmination of another disappointment. I had supported Bill de Blasio thinking he was a centrist, and he was a disaster. And then when Adams came in, I believed that Eric Adams was corrupt, even when he was running last time, and you know what he was doing when he was borough president, as I understood it, which we now know was just wrong, and it was not unethical, and it was at least arguably criminal.
Should he resign?
I'm not going to be the person to tell him that he should resign. I am going to be the person to say that Kathy Hochul should have suspended him.
But she didn't. She put the guardrails in place. And if you were to become mayor, those guardrails are very much in play. So do you support the guardrails?
I don't support the guardrails. I mean, the last thing that New York City needs is Albany telling us more what to do. Albany already has too much power over New York City, and we contribute so much to the state and the nation's economy. We should have autonomy and independence. So, you know, when I win, I'm going to fight to make sure that those guardrails come off.
So you right now still think that she should remove him?
I do.
Yeah.
I've said that all along. She should have suspended him. The first deputy mayor would have sat for 30 days. They could have gotten Jumaane Williams ready to be the mayor for the interim period of time. We would have had the election. That would have been a better approach than what we have now, which is a mess.
I want to talk about some of the big issues for New Yorkers right now. Obviously, you hear from many of them. Public safety is a big one. And you just put out on X saying this, quote, broken windows policing worked, but the district attorneys are not enforcing these laws. As mayor, I will set up my own task force of officers to enforce the law, end quote. So let me break that down, right? First, what do you see as broken windows policing? And do you think that it actually works and reduces crime?
Well, I think it certainly works, and it has worked in New York City. I mean, you can go back to the data and see when broken windows was used during the Giuliani administration. Now, were there excesses? Yes, there were. Does it need to be done in a thoughtful way that's respectful of disadvantaged communities? 100%.
Yeah, because there's a racial component here.
Of course. And I mean, listen, I know that as well as anyone, that policing needs to get better, and police want to police in a good and effective manner, and not in a discriminatory way. But until we start enforcing these quality of life crimes, we're not going to get the people that are have warrants outstanding or guns on them, and we're going to see disorder spread. You could go down in the subway today, the way I do, and you see people, regular people, jumping the turnstile all the time because they're like, why do I have to pay for it if these other people don't?
But some say it's a bigger issue than that, that there's more of a district attorney problem and a revolving door, people being arrested and being put right back on the street. How would you fix that?
So as mayor, you can't really fix that problem because it's an Albany problem, but this is where our elected officials have failed us. Some of the aspects of bail reform were good. I mean, there shouldn't be people sitting in jail just because they're poor. But at the same time, the law did not permit the one thing that we need, which is a presumption of detention if you're a danger to the community. It's common sense. Federal law has it. State law never has. That's where Andrew Cuomo and the other people that passed bail reform fell down. And I'm going to be advocating as strongly as possible for there to be a reform to the law to do what we need, which is to keep dangerous people behind bars and stop the revolving door. And
the other big conversation playing out right now, and it played out just this week in Washington, D.C. with the mayor testifying, is about sanctuary city status and the migrant crisis, right? So let me ask you first and foremost, should New York City be a sanctuary city?
Yeah, of course, but sanctuary city doesn't mean what people think it means. It doesn't mean that we're promoting illegal immigration. It means that when people are here and they're dealing with kids and they need benefits, that when they're applying, that they're not going to be turned over to what is now ICE. But the ideal of a sanctuary city is an important thing. I mean, all of us are immigrants. On my mother's side, I'm first generation. This is really important to me. But at the same time, the idea that the guy who set Debrina Kawam, the woman who was immolated on the subway, set her on fire, was arrested, and ICE can't put a detainer on him because of the laws. Now I think there's an argument that the laws...
So that's where you actually agree with Eric Adams.
I do. Well, I agree with Eric Adams that the laws need to be reformed so that police and federal officials can do their jobs. And when you have someone who's committed a heinous crime and you can't put a detainer on them, something's broken.
So how do you see what the Trump administration is trying to do right now with the ICE raids and deportations? Do you support those moves?
Listen, ICE should not be in schools, in churches, in education, in other educational facilities, and I'll tell you what,
but they aren't right now.
But they shouldn't be in Rikers either, right? The last thing when you're the warden of a prison that you want is everyone that's there knowing that ICE is going to come get them, because what that will mean is that they will stab people, they'll riot because they don't want to go back to their home countries. That's why you don't have collateral enforcement in a prison.
So do you support what Trump is doing then, the president?
The only thing I support is getting people out of the country that either are criminals or have fraudulent political asylum applications. Everyone else should have due process of law. The federal government needs to increase the number of immigration judges to assess those applications more quickly so that we can put people into categories. If there are families here that have valid political asylum claims, I'm going to support them and I'm going to protect them. If there are people that lied about getting in here and they filed false political asylum applications, they're eventually going to have to go. That's a federal issue, and we should cooperate to make sure that we can put people in the right category.
Okay. This is just the scratching of the surface here and the tip of the iceberg. We'll have many more conversations along the campaign trail, but Jim Walden, I appreciate you coming on today.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.